Hi, this is Professor Bingle, and we're here for a quick review of training heart rate. We will discuss how to determine training heart rate by both the maximum heart rate method and the heart rate reserve method. We've discussed the FIT principle. We're going to focus on the intensity part of that equation. If we'd like to work out at a low intensity, the ACSM says that we will work out at 30 to 39% of our heart rate reserve or 57 to 63% of our maximum heart rate. If we'd like to work out in a more vigorous intensity, that means 60 to 89% of our heart rate reserve, 77 to 95% of our maximum heart rate. Training heart rate is the best way for us to determine that we are exercising at an intensity great enough to cause the adaptations that we desire. This is one of the best ways to consistently measure intensity because, as we'll learn in future chapters, heart rate is directly correlated to VO2, so it is a reliable indicator of intensity. We would like to obtain a training heart rate zone that's high enough to cause adaptation, but not too high to cause injury and exhaustion. The maximum heart rate method is simple and easy. Most gyms where you work out will actually have a chart hanging up on the wall. All you need to know is your age. For this class, we're going to use the equation 220 minus your age. There are several formulas out there. This one is the most widely accepted for the widest variety of age groups. So, in order to determine our maximum heart rate, we'll take our age, which in this case we'll assume is 20, and we'll subtract it from 220. Since the maximum heart rate is the fastest your heart can possibly beat, it doesn't change with your fitness level. In order to calculate your training heart rate zone, we're going to take your maximum heart rate. So if we're 20 years old, we're going to take 220 minus 20, and our maximum heart rate will be determined to be 200. We're going to multiply that by the training intensity given to us by the ACSM. 200 times 0.65 equals 130 beats per minute. 200 times 90%, or 0.9, is 180 beats per minute. Now, using this information, this particular client would work out at around 130 beats per minute on a low intensity day. She'd work out around 180 during high intensity intervals for short periods of time. Most of her training would take place somewhere in the middle. Resting heart rate. In order to determine resting heart rate, you will take your heart rate for a full minute on 3 separate occasions so that we can get an accurate measure. You'll remember from class that that means perhaps first thing in the morning before leaving bed, or maybe later on in the evening after you're laying on the couch for a while. Why is resting heart rate important? You will recall that resting heart rate can be used as a measure of fitness. If you have a resting heart rate of 80 and you start a consistent aerobic workout routine and you continue that for 6 months or a year, you will likely lower your resting heart rate, maybe to 76, maybe to 74, but it will adjust according to your fitness level. Granted, genetics play a big role, so it is certainly not the only measure of fitness that we would use. Using the heart rate reserve method is slightly more complicated, but we will use our resting heart rate to make our training heart rate zone a little bit more personalized. So we will take the Carbonin equation. We're going to figure out our heart rate reserve by determining our maximum heart rate. If we're 20, our maximum heart rate is still 200. Then we will take our maximum heart rate minus our resting heart rate. Most people will find that it's between 60 and 80 beats per minute. Genetics plays a role. It could be 50, it could be 90. Take it for 3 days so that you have an accurate measure. We will then take our heart rate reserve, which, if we are 20 years old and have a resting heart rate of 80, we would calculate as follows: 200 minus 80 equals 120. Now that we have our heart rate reserve, we're going to use that number to determine our training heart rate zone. We have 120, our heart rate reserve, multiplied by 50%. That number is given to us by the ACSM. Then we will add back in our resting heart rate. That is the step most students forget, so make sure you remember to do that. That will give us 60 plus 80 equals 140 beats per minute. We'll repeat the process by taking our heart rate reserve, same number for both equations, heart rate reserve, multiplied by 85%, 0.85. Then we will add 80. That gives us 102. Remember, we do the parentheses first. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Then we add 80, and that gives us 182 beats per minute. Now, you will determine your training heart rate as part of your homework. Once you have those numbers, we're going to figure out what your range would be for each of these occasions. For a long, slow distance day, your training heart rate would be obviously the lowest intensity. For a more intense steady state day or a shallow interval day, maybe where you go up a little bit, down a little bit, up a little bit, down a little bit, not too much variation, your training heart rate is going to be in the moderate zone. For high intensity interval training, like perhaps Tabata, your training heart rate is going to be at the absolute most vigorous zone, perhaps even a little bit above at times. You need to memorize these numbers, your personal numbers that you've calculated. We're going to use them every day in class, along with your heart rate monitors. So here ends our review of training heart rate zone. See you in class.